Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm back with another process video using the August Faith Art Box from Creative Retreat Kits. Now we are wrapping up the month, it's the end of the month, and so I'm sure most of us have journaled most, if not all, of the scriptures that are in the devotional content for this month. So I thought I'd come on and maybe share with you a different way to use your products. This is a great way to use up leftovers, or just to stretch your kits a little bit further, think outside of the box, take it outside of our Bibles and use it a little bit differently. So my video earlier this month was doing a memory decks card. I will link that video down below for you guys. But today we're just going to do a greeting card. So I wanted to show you how to use the sentiments from this stamp set and change them up from Bible verse to a sentiment that'll work on a card. And it's quick and easy. We're not going to use too many products here. I did pull out some fun things that I haven't used in a while, like Nouveau crystal drops. I thought maybe I could use some of these to kind of get that honey effect, kind of give a 3D effect. I pulled out some enamel dots from past kits. Some of these are still available as just individual purchase from Creative Retreat Kits, so I'll link those down below for you guys. I have a honeycomb stencil. This is the Shifter Hex stencil from Tim Holtz. I'll try to link that down below. And then some distress inks. I have Scattered Straw, Wild Honey. I'm going to do some heat embossing, but you could really keep this nice and simple and not use some of the extra little bits. But you know me, I'm always extra. I got to have all the things. So let me go ahead and put you on fast forward and I'll show you how I put together this greeting card using the August Faith Art Box.
Okay, so I have a couple of things here. I have a card base. I just took a 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock that I cut in half and then folded in half. So it's a 4.25 by 5.5 top folding card base. And then this piece here is a smaller piece of cardstock. So it was originally cut to 4.25 by 5.5, the same size as the front of the card. And then I cut off 1/4 inch off the top and the side. So that's what? That's 4 inches by 5.25, and this will be slightly smaller than the card base, but you do you, whatever size card you want to do. But I'm just working on this front panel piece, and so I'm using this stencil. And I'm first going in with Scattered Straw, and then now I'm going in with Wild Honey, using a makeup brush to just lightly blend some into the corner of this card piece. Now, this stencil is really cool. It has like openings that you can blend through, and then you shift the stencil over and line it up, and then you can blend either a different color through or something like that. And so it gives you this like two-tone effect with the stencil. It's pretty cool. So I'll link that down below. But I went ahead and did that and heat set it, and now I've got this panel in my stamp positioning tool, and this just helps me make sure that my stamping is nice and lined up evenly. You can just stamp with a regular stamp block. The stamp set from this month has the word your and are, but I needed to say you are, so I put the your in here first and just inked up the you portion of it, so I didn't ink the R, stamped it, and then I went ahead and put the R in there as well. Now initially I stamped this using some black VersaFine Onyx ink, and I'm going to do some heat embossing as well. This ends up not going how I had planned, so you can adjust it to however you see fit. But I heat set the VersaFine ink because it is a pigment ink, so it stays wet a little bit longer. So I heat set it, used my powder tool over that whole corner there, and now I'm loading up the word sweet, and so I'm going to heat emboss the word sweet. So I've got it loaded up. I'm going to ink it up with some clear sticky ink. This is Versamark, and then I can close the door, stamp it down. Again, you can do all of this with just a regular stamp block. The stamp positioning tool just makes it a little bit easier to line up. I'm using some Zing Copper Metallic embossing powder. I'll link a video down below all about embossing if you have questions about that, so you can check it out. But what I'm finding is as I'm putting the powder on here, the powder is sticking to the words you are, which this powder will stick to anything that has any moisture in it, and so I must not have had those stamped images dry enough, so the embossing is sticking to it as well. So the entire thing is going to be embossed with this copper color, which ends up being fine. I just wanted to bring a little bit of black in there so that where the areas of that T kind of overlap the word R, I wanted it to stand out, but it ends up working out just fine. So you could just heat emboss the entire sentiment if you wanted to. You could do all of it in black, you know, learn from my mistakes. So I went ahead and heat set that and set it aside for a minute. Now I have a little scrap of vellum, and I'm going to make some vellum bees just exactly the same way that I did them for the Memory Decks card. I'm inking up the bee stamp with that Versamark ink and stamping it on the vellum. I did prep the vellum with the powder tool really, really well. Vellum can be very sticky with embossing powder, so you want to make sure that you use a powder tool of some sort to prep it first. And then again, using that same copper metallic embossing powder. And with vellum, you want to make sure that the heat tool is good and hot before you bring it to the vellum. And then I move from the front to the back to the front to the back. That way I don't have as much warping of the vellum. So I just heat set that until it's nice and shiny. And then now I've flipped it over and I'm coloring it in with, might be orange glaze. It might be terracotta. I'm not sure. It's a dark orange marker and then a black marker. Exactly the same way that I did them for the Memory Decks card. So I went ahead and fussy cut out those little bees, and they're just chilling there for just a second while I work on some other details here. I've pulled out that little droplet stamp and some copper delicata ink. This is a shimmery copper ink. You could also heat emboss these, but heat embossing can be kind of labor intensive, so I was just going for easy. So I stamped a couple of those little droplets, and now I've pulled out these enamel dots, and I'm going to add a few of these just as some little accents around that sentiment, "You are sweet." I'm wanting to draw attention to that sentiment, so I'm going to use a combination of yellows and oranges. You could skip stamping the little droplets and just use the enamel dots, but I kind of thought it was fun to have a mixture in there because it's otherwise a pretty plain and simple card, and so by adding a few little details like this, kind of jazz it up and dress it up and make it seem a little bit nicer than just, you know, a plain card. All right, so now we can pop up these bees. I'm using some itty bitty little foam squares, and I'm putting them behind the head and behind the behind the booty of the bee. And that way the adhesive is kind of hidden in those colored areas, and then they are kind of popped up on those foam squares. So I'm going to set that aside for a second and work on the inside of the card. I don't always add sentiments to the inside of the card, but I like this idea of kind of carrying the sentiment over. So the front will say "You are sweet," and the inside bottom corner is going to say "Like honey." So I'm going to go ahead and just heat emboss. I could have used my stamp positioning tool, but I'm showing you here. You can also use a stamp block, inking it up with Versamark. I have the words "like" and "honey" all loaded up at the same time. And then we'll use that same copper embossing powder in there. Now this is a little bit thinner of a cardstock than I typically use for my card bases. I like to use 110 pound. I think this is only like 65 pound. So I do have a little bit of warping with the heat when I heat set it here, but I can just kind of flatten it out with my hands and it works out just fine. So I heat set that. Now we can start attaching things to the front. So I am going to pop up this panel with a little bit of foam adhesive. This is a pretty thin foam adhesive, so if I wanted to send this through the mail, it wouldn't be a problem. And it just kind of pops it up. You know, it is white on white card base with a white card panel, and so this just kind of adds a little bit of interest by having the foam adhesive on there. So I'm just pulling those backer sheets off. This is one that I found from the dollar store, and it's kind of crummy, so I wouldn't recommend it. Now you can see that panel popped up there. So here's where I'm going to bring in the Nuvo Crystal Drops. I always forget about these because they do take a really long time to dry, but this one I think is the limoncello color. It's very, very translucent. It has a little bit of that kind of honey color to it. So I'm adding it to the little drops, and then I'm adding it to the wings of the bees. And you're going to get a lot of headshots in here because I'm making sure that I'm just getting a nice even coating inside the wing without overlapping the embossed lines. And I don't add too much. It is vellum. Vellum doesn't really play well with any kind of moisture, so I'm just adding just enough that it adds some dimension and interest to their wings. So there's a look at the finished card. I love how this came out. Very simple, but really sweet. And it's nice to just have some handmade cards on hand to pass out to people when I need them. So there's a look at the project. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below for me. Check out the description box for links to everything that I used today. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.